We are certainly in a moment in time where the future of this country is at an inflection point. But frankly, we are also in a moment in time where some decisions have to be made as Unitarian Universalists. The state of rapid change, the evolving state of religious and social communities, the need for this country to find its grounding, its center, its purpose for moving forward, that feels true for us as Unitarian Universalists as well. After General Assembly in June, my wife and I, as I said, took a trip across the country. We went places where the beauty was astounding. Arches National Park in Utah, New Mexico near and around Santa Fe, and taking the ferry across the San Francisco Bay as we passed underneath the New Bay Bridge coming into San Francisco. It was a privilege to have this time and the ability to do this, and it touched me deeply. Traveling around and seeing the beauty of this country that we all inhabit, the fact that we as one nation can't seem to even get close to the same page. This trip filled me with joy, but also made me quite sad. Then, while driving on the way home, we stopped at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, which is the site of the death of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and this place that lives at the National Civil Rights Museum. I never thought that I would be there. I never thought that I would be near there as this lore of American history lives in this place. This place where Dr. King came to support sanitation workers to have more humane conditions. This place, through violence, demonstrated some of the most tragic aspects that still plague our communal lives. As I toured the museum, I couldn't help but be inspired by the incredible sacrifices that so many had made, which was never more apparent to me than as in the moment I stood in deep reverence 2 feet away from the balcony on which Dr. King died. As Unitarian Universalists, we don't have a creedalism about life after death. We try to create heaven here on earth. Theologian Meister Eckhart said it this way: in this life we are to become heaven so that God might find a home here in us. So what does this mean to become heaven? It begs the question, can we turn from fear to have clarity about the practice of this tradition? Can we have some shared understanding about our collective mission? And maybe, just maybe, can we be a place so full of love that even as we hold strong to the values and we interpret those values to mean work to increase vitally needed connection and strive to build community and promote service to greater good, to do nothing less than contribute to the betterment of humanity, can we do that together? Of course, how do we do this with so much understandable fear and a good deal, I will say, of righteous anger? There have been so many years of political fights, protests, of dangerous and deceitful policies, events that have called us to important actions of religious witness, and screaming or honestly swearing at the television, news, or social media. And I can't believe that I am the only one here who's ever done that. Then add that to the lying, to the lack of humility, the attack on people and issues that we deeply care for. For example, many of us have stood outside the NRA headquarters on and off for many years, being incredibly angry and frustrated, especially after each horribly tragic shooting, and afraid for the future, as those who oppose common sense gun laws watch from the safety of their Northern Virginia office building. And this all comes in a political and social environment where the agenda over and over and over again is framed by those who so often profess values that seem diametrically opposed to those that we hold dear. In those moments, here's what I try to remember. The disease that gave birth to the MAGA movement is much deeper and wider than any one person. It is as old as this country's birth, and it is a virus that has spread throughout generations, taking many different forms. What that means is we must bolster our immune systems. We must use beauty and joy and love and gratitude and grace and compassion and empathy as a vaccine to stave off that which flows so dangerously from fear, the disregard, the anger, the hate, and the othering. We must be a place of refuge and kindness. And we must be here for each other, to help each other and to remind each other of the practice of this faith, because we are all in difficult times. But they will only be more difficult if we succumb to all the things that we are trying to heal in this world. There have been all kinds of assessments and academic studies and prognostications about how we've arrived at this point in this country, a country in need of so much healing. This is why books like Bowling Alone, which talks about the breakdown of our social lives together, written by Robert Putnam in 2000, or assessments of how social media is creating tribal echo chambers, or how excess individualism, in part based on late-stage capitalism, is contributing to our polarization. But here's what I'm wondering. What if, and I'm only doing some out loud speculating here, what if somehow in some way we Unitarian Universalists put away whatever internal squabbles we may have, work together to manage our own fear, righteous anger, and frustration, found a deep grace for things in our congregations that don't always meet our personal needs, let the past inform us, but not in any way be beholden to it, and then see our shared religious purpose to be an incredibly bold effort to live out our newly stated values by practicing a groundbreaking practice of putting love at the center of everything that we do. Boldness lives in us. Boldness is a part of our religious heritage. When the prevailing conservative theology of the day demanded a biblical understanding of the Trinity, Michael Servetus wrote a book called On the Errors of the Trinity and paid for it with his life. When Francis David Transylvania denied the necessity of invoking Jesus Christ in prayer in the 1500s and supported the first edict of religious tolerance, and after the king died, was brought to trial as a blasphemous innovator, sentenced to life in prison where he died. And a bit of a lighter note, but certainly no less bold, Universalists were one of the first denominations in America to ordain a woman minister on June 25th, 1863, and her name was Olympia Brown. And in a more modern example, quoting from a story from the BBC, First Unitarian Church of Dallas specifically has a long history of fighting for abortion access, having helped bring about the 1973 ruling that had been guaranteeing the right to the procedure. That mission has not ended with the reversal of Roe versus Wade, for their work to provide safe access for women's reproductive care continues. Yay, Dallas. These examples and so many other from our history that we are a place of boldness. And we've been placing love at the center for a long time. It's actually part of our heritage. And when I talk about love, I'm not talking about some amorphous kind of love. I'm not talking about a love that doesn't acknowledge anger, frustration, and fear. I'm talking about a love with purpose, with strategy, with tactics. I'm talking about a love surrounded by the values of interdependence and equity and transformation and pluralism and generosity and justice. I'm talking about a love with a laser-focused understanding of a shared mission to turn our gaze and our efforts outward, with the goals of decreasing polarization by creating community, to overcoming individualism by increasing connection, and to recognizing necessary sacrifice in service to a greater good for nothing less than the betterment of humanity. What if a movement of neighborliness burst out across the country? With the understanding we may have different feelings and often wildly different opinions, but we agree to try to rebuild community. What if we still deeply care about the issues and the people they impact and continue to vow to work to support them and also work to get out of the echo chambers and comfort of our own tribes? What if, and again, I'm just brainstorming here, instead of leading with discussions of the things we can't seem to agree on, we created community-wide opportunities for the kind of connection we seek together, like, let's say, giant communal gardening clubs where we take care of the land together, or large meals where communities could come together and just eat, and maybe just talk about our family issues, which is something everyone can relate to. Or something like the Northern Virginia intentionally bipartisan, multicultural, interfaith, no-faith, intergenerational, omnivore, and vegan choir. I'm not sure what music they would sing, but I'm sure Laura could figure that out. I understand that there are already organizations hard at work to increase community and decrease polarization, and I am grateful that they exist. And I want to assure you, I also truly understand that there are issues of safety, especially for those so often targeted by ideologies of hate and fear, that would have to be taken into account. UUCF and all of our congregations need to remain a place of support and refuge for all those who need it. I can't say that strongly enough. So I'm not saying the path to practicing Unitarian Universalism in this way is clear, nor would the work in any way be easy. What I am saying is that this is 2024, and we are in a world of hurt. And this is an historic faith tradition where since our inception, and now even more clearly perhaps than ever before, we have officially placed love at the center of our practice. At times it feels like we have very few shared agreements, but doing our best to create heaven here on earth is close to one of them. It is a vital calling of this faith to challenge ourselves to not only practice putting love at the center for the people in our congregations, but to be not afraid to model it by getting out of our comfort zones and doing whatever we can to help heal this world. As I stood there this summer at that balcony on the Lorraine Motel, I understood that fear is an important and honest response to the boldness and vulnerability of committing ourselves to a practice of active and, might I say, transformational love. It's no small calling, but I've always felt that someone has to blink first for a real transformation to occur. And I see no other choice for us than to, quote, numerous colleagues, to love the hell out of this world. to love the hell out of this world. And as often been said, if not who, if not us, who? And if not now, for God's sakes, when?